everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hot Tag with Brandi. No, we missed her last week, obviously. Some things going on there, and we hope that Brandi's friend is getting the best of care, and obviously all of us wish her the best. I know a lot of you guys had mentioned that in our chats and stuff last week, so welcome, Brandi, and listen, we hope that everything is going as well as it can, and we're glad to have you back for our last part of The Undertaker.
I'm ready. But I never thought I would say that I would be tired of learning information about one wrestler, but I think I need a break.
I can completely understand that. Yes, I can completely understand that. I mean, obviously, I know all the guys are watching the last ride, and ironically enough, you're going to finish up a couple days before the last episode of Last Ride, too. So there you go.
I know. It's perfect.
There you go. Awesome, man. Well, let's get started, and we'll finish up our show on The Undertaker, and then you can kind of preview what we're doing next. And if you have a book, as always, to recommend, we'll go into that too.
You know I have a book.
I knew you would.
Okay, guys. I was thinking, since we left off on so much of the Hell in a Cell match with Foley and Taker, we would just move right into the ministry. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let me say, this is my least favorite form of The Undertaker. I don't like it. I don't like the symbol. I don't like the kind of throne that The Undertaker had that looked like a symbol. I don't like the idea of sacrificing people. That was a bit much for me. But you know, he got to work with some great people. He got to work with the Brood. You know, he brought in, the acolytes with this whole group. What was his name? Midian? Was it Midian? Is that right?
And, Midian, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, he had some injuries during this time, the 98-99 period. And so them kind of doing his bidding was a good way for him to stay really involved, even if he couldn't actually do a lot in the ring.
Yeah. I know this is a divisive time for a lot of people too. I know we had some people talking to us about Undertaker in some chats that we had, and they said that, again, like you, the symbolism of it, and of course, this was in the Attitude Era, so it was almost kind of an anything goes out there, and they didn't care really about the controversy they were going to incur. They were kind of encouraging for children not to watch. So yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of crazy things during this time.
There's one point where Undertaker, he's got Kane in a mental asylum. He's trying to embalm Austin. He tries to put Austin on his symbol, you know, to crucify him, or if that's how you want to call it. And then he kidnaps Stephanie McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they have a lot going on.
They did. Yeah, they absolutely did. A lot of horror elements to this, that you kind of think it's funny because, you know, what we're seeing today from things that, you know, you almost kind of wonder if people have become more tolerant of this kind of stuff. But it's, it's we're in a different society now, and there would be a lot more lashing out of people about things. So yeah, it was really a crazy time.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite part of this era of The Undertaker, you know, he even changed his look, you know, to an extent during this period. He's darker. He's more demonic. It's a more sinister Undertaker than the one that we've known before. But my favorite part of this is he keeps saying, you know, he gets his power from a higher power. And he never says, okay, what it's from. And then, you know, the more the Stephanie angle unfolds, and then Vince has Austin go rescue Stephanie after Undertaker has kidnapped her, and he wants to marry her and then sacrifice her on his symbol. And then after that, the Undertaker kind of allies himself with Shane, and by the end of it, you realize that Vince has been the higher power all along.
Yep. Yep. It's well, you know what? I mean, the Fiend talks about Devil Vince. So
Mm-hmm.
there you go. Look, this was the time when Vince put himself out there as the
Yes.
bad guy. Vince was the biggest heel in WWE then. So yeah, he put himself out there as the heel
Mm-hmm.
for Austin. I think somebody was I think on the Undertaker's last ride this week, Undertaker had been talking about that, and he mentioned how Vince put himself out there to really get Steve Austin over.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess some of the same could be said, for in this part of it anyway, for Undertaker as well.
Well, so much of it, I believe, began with the Montreal screw job. Then Vince comes out in, one of the first real interviews you get with him outside of the announcer, and he says, Brett screwed Brett. And then you're like, okay, here's bad guy Vince. And it continues with Austin and continues through the Attitude Era.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jeff, what do you think of this version of The Undertaker?
I'm not I'm not as big a fan of it either. Just because of some of the symbols and some of the controversy, but I
Mm-hmm.
realized it was a different time, and so that's to be expected because at that time, honestly, WWE was just doing anything they could to survive at that point. So the more
Mm-hmm.
outlandish, the more controversial they felt like that would equate to more eyes on TV screen. So I understand why they did what they did.
Right.
Undertaker actually had said that he felt. I was just reading a thing about him too. He said that was they quoted him that was out there when I started putting Stephanie on my symbol. So I think even he kind of held it in question. I mean, look again, that kind of stuff. Um, horror films had been changing, and we've talked about this on our show so many times. Like, WWE kind of reflects the generations,
Yes.
and horror films had been changing at that point too. You were getting a lot more bizarre horror films, a lot more like exorcism stuff, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
demonic stuff, a lot more. So look, it reflects the times, and
Yeah.
wrestling always has. So that's probably where the writers were kind of getting some of this stuff from, I would imagine. But kudos to we always say this, but the wrestlers have to go out there and just kind of do what they're told. And if the writers are
Right.
telling them to do this stuff, then kudos to the Undertaker for going out there and doing what he was told to do.
Yeah. And during this period of time between, I'd say, 98 2000, you've really got some great stuff with Kane and the Undertaker. You see the formation of the Brothers of Destruction. You see this kind of era of the Undertaker, and then towards the end of that, you have Bradshaw and Ron Simmons breaking off, and they're the APA, and they're one of the best tag teams, in my opinion, of all time. So there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of this era of time. It's just maybe the getting there wasn't the best in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Bradshaw and that the APA was great. I'll never forget. I went to a local show, and they went to a local bar restaurant like right down the road, and they literally were buying everyone drinks in the restaurant the night that they went.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny stuff.
And the Undertaker ends up with some injuries during this period of time, and he's out for a little bit, and then he comes back as the American Badass. And I just want to touch on this because I don't consider this classic Undertaker character, so we're going to kind of skip forward a little bit. But this character, I think, is more Mark Calloway than a lot of other incarnations of his character. And I think the last Taker that we saw in the WrestleMania 36 match with AJ Styles was more Mark Calloway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that it was a very good show of confidence in him by Vince to let him do that. I don't know that Vince was a fan of it originally, but he did some great work during that period of time. He had some great matches with Triple H. He had a little feud with Brock Lesnar. You know, for those of the fans who don't realize, hey, there was a match before WrestleMania 30. There was a little interaction with Brock Lesnar there in that period of time too. So if you want a different version of Mark Calaway, go back and look at the American Badass stuff.
Yeah. I often wonder about that actually too, because I mean, I know they obviously had Kid Rock was super popular then. And the fact that he came, he came out to that song, you start to kind of wonder about some things too. And is it almost like a promotional thing? WWE was getting into the whole trying to get back into the whole rock and roll thing. They had some rock. They always had been involved in music, but they had some rock stars coming to shows and events and everything again. So yeah, it was just that struck me as kind of odd, really, because he was Undertaker for so many years, and then all of a sudden it just changes to this character, and it wasn't one of my favorite incarnations of him either. And yeah, I get it. And now that we saw that WrestleMania match, you definitely saw when he came riding in on the motorcycle, the tribute to that character. So you kind of get the feeling that may have been a little more personal than a lot of people thought it would be.
I think so. And I like it for this reason. You get to see a different side and a stretching of his character in general, but also he does different wrestling moves. His matches then are not as plodding. They're not quite as scripted out to be quite as slow. And you realize Mark Calaway can do a lot more in the ring than just The Undertaker.
I remember when he was in WCW, and he's so athletic, and would do things that the traditional big man just wouldn't do.
Yes.
And I remember listening to his interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he was saying how when he first created the character and really started working as the Undertaker, he had to purposely slow himself down because he felt like the character was more of a methodical, slower type of worker, as opposed to what he had done throughout his career up to that point.
And from what I've read, Vince's original concept of The Undertaker was this kind of old-fashioned Western-like Undertaker person. So you might see, oddly enough, in Tombstone, something like that.
Right.
And, he was able to evolve over time. And after the American Badass character, I think The Undertaker himself evolved. And Mark Calaway was not excited to come back to the Undertaker character. He was kind of hoping that he was quote unquote dead and buried. And, but, the fans just wanted the Undertaker back so much. I think Vince wanted him back. And I've read that was a little bit of a fight between those two. And, Taker finally said, okay, I'll come back. And so 2004, you see him return, and he starts off with some stuff with JBL, where they had formerly been allies. You now have the Texan, big horns on the vehicle, suit wearing, bling wearing version of JBL. And he's such a great heel, and they do so much great stuff during this period of time. They have a match that's no holds barred, no disqualification, and they end up destroying a limo. Do you guys remember that match?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, I do.
Supposedly Vince says, what can we destroy? Oh, there's a limo. You know what? Go destroy it.
I always wondered, and the younger people that listen to the show aren't going to get this reference, but I always wondered if JBL didn't get that character from J.R. Ewing in Dallas. Because
it has to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, one of the biggest villains ever on TV. If you don't know what Dallas is, it was a soap opera kind of a thing that was on at night back in the 80s. And of course, the storyline from that was who shot JR. They actually had him shot on the series, and they ended it, and then it was a cliffhanger the following year, and then it really was stupid after that. But yeah, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it had to be based on that character because he was just a rich guy that everybody hated. And he drove around in big limos and said, wore the cowboy hat. So, yeah, it had to be.
And I have to mention this. You couldn't do this now, but during this feud of JBL and the Undertaker, there's this one night, and it could have been on SmackDown. I'm almost sure it was on SmackDown, but he has a little Undertaker come out. And
yes.
I'm like, you can't do that now. And I'm thinking, Vince, he loves to destroy cars, he loves bodily functions, and he loves little people. So, what do you do? And then later on, during one of their matches before the feud ends, JBL's been hurt. He's like, I can't fight. So they wanted to put him in a body cast, and he's got like these braces kind of around him. He's got like this head thing around his neck, but it extends over his head, and he's got the cowboy hat on top of the thing that extends over his head. So I can't help but laugh when I imagine that, and what Undertaker must have thought. Like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. Oh man, it's again some of the you wonder, and I mean, again, going back to the last ride show, people are talking about him. This past episode, especially, they were talking about a lot about his past and how he was able to keep kayfabe. And they said he did an amazing job with that because they said no matter where he went, he was always in character. And, whether he went to an event, whether he went to a sporting event or whatever, he was in that Undertaker character. And that is not easy to do for a long period of time.
He would wear all black, and there's a little bit of behind the scenes gossip around this time. They implement a dress code, and Vince says, okay, Taker, you don't have to do it because you have to stay in character. And he said Cena didn't have to do it. Yep. And a lot of people thought, okay, well, they just didn't want to do it. They're not adhering to the dress code. But it was no, Vince wanted them to stay in character. And even Taker said, look, I want to be like the boys. I don't want to do this. And I think eventually maybe he went to dress pants, was still in all black and that kind of stuff.
It's crazy. I said, kudos to him for doing that. And I think that's why so many people are intrigued by this, because it's the first time you're ever really hearing about him. First time he's ever really opened up about something. And it's really amazing.
Do either of you guys have a favorite moment from the JBL Taker feud?
Oh, probably the limo thing, I would think. That's the thing I thought of before you even went into that. I think was probably my favorite moment, I would think, from that feud. Yeah.
That's mine too.
What about you, Jeff?
I'm gonna have to agree. Yeah. That was awesome. So
yeah, it was awesome. That was before blowing up cars became a thing that they did on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Of course, when DX came to play, and you had the whole feud with them and other wrestlers and stuff, that became a more commonplace thing where they blew up cars, and they blew up Vince's limo, and they blew up a monster truck, and they blew up, so it became a common thing.
Look, when they destroyed the Corvette, I wanted to cry. Like, there's this beautiful car and you're pouring cement into it. What are you doing? Like, that one hurt me a little bit. But after Undertaker, finishes the feud with JBL, he moves out to a pretty controversial character, and I want to get you guys' perspective on this guy too. Muhammad Hassan. This guy is not somebody I'm really familiar with during this period of time. I was kind of off and on with wrestling, back and forth, I'd catch a show here or there. But the feud starts with Muhammad Hassan And eventually he comes out and he's got these 5 hooded characters with him. Like they're gonna, defeat the Undertaker that way. And then a couple days later, you have the bombing in London.
This guy was this came about, I think, was this after 9/11, his character?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured, because that's what I remember about him. And obviously, man, that's a tough way to go, even for WWE, because because of what happened, obviously, at 9/11, and the shock of it, and everything for everybody, and everybody around the world, and then to bring in a character that was almost considered to be like a terrorist type of character was brave, even for them to do.
Yeah. And the show where he comes out and he's got the 5 hooded people, that it's supposed that they're also Middle Eastern descent, or something to that nature. They pull it from London TV. They pull it from a lot of places.
Yep.
And
yeah.
And it's not seen again. And then Undertaker eventually defeats him. He gives him the last ride through the stage, and you don't really see Muhammad Hassan again.
I mean, I guess you can kind of compare that with them doing the, obviously Hulk Hogan and Iron Sheik, things back in the 80s. They always kind of took their biggest face and put them up against their biggest, villain or rival. Sergeant Slaughter is another good example when Sergeant Slaughter turned bad. They always kind of had that where, whoever the United States has been facing or was an enemy of them, they put up against their biggest face at the time. So having Undertaker, take him on, I mean, obviously you see where they're going with that.
Yeah. And, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was very, very popular to have a foreign heel and to have your like you were saying, your top face defeat the villain.
Yep.
It was good guys versus bad guys, and it was superheroes versus super villains, and, that very cartoonish attitude toward what they were putting out.
Yep, absolutely.
It's not fair, I think, to a lot of these characters that people were playing, because it only reinforces stereotypes. And,
right.
I'm glad that we're getting to a point now that they're not doing that as much.
Yeah, I agree. Bring back the more cartoonish type of villains, and I think that's why that's kind of why people like the Fiend so much, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a horror character. I mean, I guess people can say things about him too if they want to, because of the multiple personality disorder obviously is a thing, and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree.
It's a very serious thing. And
yeah.
If they're going to go there, I want them to truly understand what they're dealing with.
Right.
Because, I think I've said this in one of our episodes before, mental health issues and mental illness, there's still a great stigma out there about that. And so if they're gonna go that way, then I think they should put out information on social media, on their website, that kind of stuff, explaining, hey, these are the issues, these are the real life issues, and if you're dealing with anything, here's a phone number how to get help. I think they have that type of responsibility if they're going to insinuate this kind of storyline.
Yeah. No, I agree. Even if they put a little disclaimer up after the show, put a little number up for people to call or whatever the case might be. Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Okay, next I'm going to move on to one of my favorite Undertaker feuds and storylines, and this is Randy Orton. This is when he's starting to become the legend killer, and they also bring in Cowboy Bob Orton in on this. I love it. It is fantastic. It's when Randy is, really coming in, really putting himself out there, coming into his own. He's a very young guy in the business at this point, and I think the Undertaker really gets him over. He really gets a lot out of Randy. and bringing in Cowboy Bob, you know, like he might use him to get over on the Undertaker is absolutely fantastic. And then, you know, there's one point in the storyline where this guy comes out and he's in makeup and he's in, you know, just very casual dressed, you know, like he might be, I don't know, a fan or something. You think he's going to help the Undertaker? Nope, he helps Randy, takes the makeup off. Who is it? It's Cowboy Bob. So
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's a great way to use a legend, and what a father-son team.
Yeah. I mean, it's things like that back then that propelled Randy to where he is now.
Yes.
And obviously he's one of the greats. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he retires. He's doing even tremendous things even today. I mean, he's the central character right now on Raw, which is insane for his age to be where he is still. I mean, and everybody will say it. He is probably one of the greatest heels that ever was. He can get you to hate him in so many ways, and the Undertaker propelled that. So yeah, I mean,
he really did.
Yep.
He gave Randy a huge push, and I think he was proud to do it. I really do. I think he had a lot of respect for Cowboy Bob, and I think he just wanted to see Randy shine, and that's what happened.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, look, it always takes someone in wrestling to give someone a push. Whether that be, you know, look at it was Andre for Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
And so it always has to be someone there that just makes that other wrestler look better. Again, I always quote Busted Open. I think Bubba Ray was talking about this on Busted Open a couple days ago too, and he said there always has to be someone for somebody to dance with in that ring.
Yes.
And they propel each other. And with Edge, you know, with Orton and Edge, of course it was, you know, the two of them he was talking about, but he said that, you know, Randy just seems to be the kind of guy that can do that for anybody, and there had to be someone for him when he started out too.
Absolutely. And my favorite time with Randy as a heel was when he kept going against Daniel Bryan. Remember, before Daniel Bryan wins the title?
Yeah.
You know, and he continues to just be you think, oh, he's this dastardly villain, and you just want him to get beaten, and he keeps winning. And that's my favorite Randy heel period in his career.
Absolutely.
But I love, you know, like we're talking about how the Undertaker has the talent, has the charisma, has the willingness to put people over like that. It's fantastic. It's how the business should work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, maybe that's going to be the thing with AJ Styles now too. AJ obviously was, you know, AJ is big in his own right. But, you know, maybe he really likes AJ. He's been talking about that in the last ride as well. So, you know, it gives AJ maybe that one last little push to get him over the edge. And, it's really cool to see, and obviously you see how respected Undertaker is in the locker room.
Absolutely.
I mean, walking backstage and everybody's coming over to him and talking to him and asking him questions and stuff like that. So, I mean, he's an icon of the business.
I have to mention this one thing before we move on to a couple more feuds and then talk about the streak, but do you guys remember the Vince McMahon Kiss My Butt Club? I don't know.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, I told you not to let me forget to mention this, but I don't remember if this is Badass period of time or still Undertaker period of time, but Vince wants JR to become a member. And so at this point, Taker's a heel, and he's in the ring with Vince, and you think at first he's going to be JR's friend, and he's not going to have to do it. And then what does Undertaker do? Undertaker grabs him, makes him do it, and you think, could the Undertaker be any worse right now? I absolutely, if you want a good laugh, guys, look that up. Look up Vince's Kiss My Butt Club and Undertaker and JR. It is one of the funniest things you will ever see in wrestling.
Yeah, I remember that. I said that had to be during the. I mean, it was definitely. Yeah, that was. he was still obviously a heel then, so that probably was that was probably the. I don't think that was the Badass era. That had to be before that.
It was 2000 or after.
Okay.
I don't believe it was still that kind of middle attitude era.
Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite Taker moments.
Yeah, that was something. Yeah, if you guys look that up, yeah, that was some funny stuff.
Not good old JR. How can you do that to good old JR? That cracks me up. But that's Vince.
That is absolutely Vince.
And I love that you mentioned Busted Open because it brings us into the next feud I want to talk about. Sexual Chocolate himself, Mr. Mark Henry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Did you guys know that he was considered to break the streak?
I did not.
Vince wanted him to break the streak, and he pitches it, and it's crickets with Taker. So they have this great feud, they have this great match, but the streak is upheld, and then we move forward to the Shawn Michaels matches. And I know this is going to be a debate. You know what? We might ring the bell, Jeff, because I know this is going to be a debate here. Which
Give me 1 second. I'm ringing the bell. Gotta love technology.
Yeah, you do.
Buzzers.
All right. What was better, 25 or 26?
Wow. Wow. That's such a hard question. Oh man.
It is.
That's what I'm here for, fellas. I'm here to give you the tough questions.
Oh man, 25. I'm gonna say, but only because it was just an iconic match and just their first. Yeah, I have to say 25. I guess. What about you, Jeff?
I'm gonna say 26, and the only reason I'm saying that is because what was at stake and the moments after the match.
Absolutely.
Of the three of those guys, I mean 26.
Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't get much better than that at the end of the match with the I mean that. Yep. Such big ramifications with both of them, and the build up for both of those matches, and yeah, I mean, who would have thought? With Shawn Michaels and him, again, two of the biggest names in pro wrestling of their generations, meeting each other in a ring, dream matchups, and I can remember going over friends' houses to watch these two matches. We'd have our get-togethers for WrestleMania that we would, and 12 or 13 of us are just sitting in a room and just glued to our seats during this entire match.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
25 is this amazing wrestling contest. I mean,
Yep.
back and forth. You don't know who's going to win till the end. And then you have 26. There's so much emotion involved. You're talking about a man's career, and he picks the Undertaker to go out with. Now, you think about how Shawn Michaels is going to end his in-ring career, and you think, oh, he's going to go out with Triple H. Or maybe he's going to go out with Kevin Nash. And he picks the Undertaker.
Yep.
How honored they both must have felt, because not only did Shawn pick the Undertaker said, okay, man, I'm proud to be the one you want to go out with. Let's do it. And let's really give the fans a barn burner. And man, did they.
Yes, they did.
And
yes, they did.
The emotion when Shawn is leaving the ring and he's going to the back, I mean, they just left the cameras going, and they let the fans just listen, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
incredible.
Absolutely historic matches for sure. And yeah, like you said, I mean, Sean had a lot of friends, and a lot of close friends in the business. And like you said, Triple H, obviously, Nash. So you would kind of think, well, maybe one of those would have been appropriate. I would assume people would think Triple H of maybe all of them, but yeah, the fact that he chose the Undertaker obviously shows the respect that Sean had for that character all throughout his career as well.
Yeah. And, I don't know that there are three guys that are closer to Vince than Shawn, Triple H, and Taker. When you think of talent who are close to the boss, that's who I think of.
Yep. And you're seeing that on the show as well. Obviously, Undertaker is not saying any bad things about Vince. He said they got into a little tiff where they didn't talk for a while, but other than that, yeah, you could see that Undertaker's got respect for him, and I think vice versa. From what all the athletes are saying, the man would just come in and do his job to the best of his ability. And he did his job for Vince and for the company to succeed. So how can you not like a guy like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys have a favorite match? But obviously, we're going to spend some time on 30, but between 26 and 30, you've got Triple H in there, you've got CM Punk in there. Do you have a favorite?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I forget if it's 27 or 28, but whichever one it was where Sean was the guest referee.
Yeah.
I forget which one it is, but
maybe it was 28. Punk was 29, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 28. But that match for me is just fantastic. And there's one sequence in the match that a lot of people talk about. And it's where Sean gives Taker sweet chin music. And he staggers over, and then Triple H gets him in the pedigree. And Taker kicks out.
Yep.
That sequence of events that's like one of the greatest sequences I've ever seen, because there's so much emotion and so much in that moment. And then after that match, to have all three of those guys go up to the top of the ramp, kind of, celebrate with each other, showing their respect. I really, really enjoyed that match.
It's an amazing show of respect. And I believe Triple H has that photo in his office of them on the ramp.
Yeah, wow.
I believe I read that somewhere. But I love the moment from the stage at the end. But my favorite before we get to 30, I'm gonna have to say is CM Punk, because I think it's very interesting that you have CM Punk, who is an extremely fantastic talent in his own right, but he's a Paul Heyman guy. And then the very next year, what do you have? You have a Paul Heyman guy. So I think it's very interesting. And Punk at this time, to me, was at the top of his game. And for him to be in a match with Undertaker, I think it's, again, one of his dream matches.
Those two had a lot of chemistry in that match.
They did.
Which was, I think, excuse me, I think it kind of surprised me because they're very different.
Yes.
Two very, very different styles. But yeah, that was definitely, Punk definitely was at the top of his game, like you said. But I was just kind of surprised how, and really, after I had seen it, I think, because I don't think that was the main event of that, was it?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I kind of remember thinking that it wasn't.
I don't think so.
And I kind of remembering the rest of that show and thinking to myself that it probably should have been in retrospect, because it was a great match. I agree with you. I think it was just an unexpected thing, and the fact that they had the match that they did. Yeah, I like that match a lot as well.
And after so many of the greats that the Undertaker has faced, he obviously goes over on Punk, and you think, who is going to defeat the Undertaker at WrestleMania? Is it possible to break the streak? And little did we know that was about to happen.
Yep.
I remember WrestleMania 30. It was on my birthday, and my son was propped up in his little baby seat between me and my husband, and we had a big bowl of popcorn, and we were ready. It was Daniel Bryan's moment, and we get to the Undertaker match, and Lesnar just absolutely destroys the person that you think is indestructible. And my mouth hung open for minutes when the 3 count came.
Yeah, I think everybody was shocked. I was as well. I didn't see it coming. I didn't realize that they had thought of. I mean, look, now watching the history of it and watching the whole story of Brock Lesnar kind of in retrospect, now you kind of get how big and important he was to the company at that point.
Yes.
So now you kind of know why Undertaker did what he did. But yeah, I never ever saw that coming. Of all the people who I would have expected to be the one, and especially to win the way he did, yeah, no, I was definitely not. I did not see that ending of that match coming that way.
I bet if you ask people who are watching at home on the network's young at this point, or on pay-per-view, or even at the event itself, where were you when you saw the streak end? They can tell you.
Yeah. Yep. Which is crazy for a sport that's really not a sport.
I know.
It's almost like a Super Bowl moment, like when you're a fan of a team, and you could always kind of remember when your team won a big championship and stuff like that, where you were. But it really was. I was with that same group of friends because we would gather every year to watch WrestleMania, and I can remember just all of us just sitting there like stunned. No one knew what to say. I know a couple of people who are big fans of The Undertaker who were not happy at all. And they kind of let that be known, but no one knew what to say. We were all just like stunned that it ended that way.
It broke my heart. And I think that's the night that Vince jumps in the ambulance with Taker because he's so hurt after the match.
Yep.
And
yep.
It's a defining moment in the business. Not just with WWE, but I think any part of the business. And later on, I think people in the company would say, now we look back on it, we wish we hadn't ended the streak. And I wish that was the case. I don't think you could look at Lesnar, and say, okay, he's less of a character, he's less of a beast if he lost to The Undertaker. But, I think that's one of those things that can be debated to the end of wrestling or wrestling entertainment.
Yep. Yeah, I agree, and yeah, it was the one where and again they talked about that on the last ride as well, about how Vince jumped in the ambulance with him, and again, it's not something that you would ever think that Vince would do, at least for many people, would it be to abandon the biggest show of the year and go with the athlete to the hospital. So again, it just kind of shows you what how close those two are.
Joe, you can't say hospital. It's medical facility.
Medical facility. Yeah.
It's medical facility.
Very true.
Hashtag WWE banned words.
Yes.
I know. We need to make a list, don't we?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so 31. I love this match. A lot of people don't give it the credit it deserves. The Bray Wyatt as the cult leader Bray versus the Deadman. The greatest in the locker room, part-time, full-time at this point. He's the paranormal king of the WWE, and now he's facing Bray Wyatt. I thought it was fantastic.
I loved it too, but I didn't love the ending at that point, to be honest. Because I at that point, I mean, I've been bought into Bray's character, especially the cult leader Bray character, from the time he started. And listen, I knew you're not going to have him. I think it was just a matter of bad timing, maybe there, because obviously you're not going to have Undertaker come back to WrestleMania and lose.
No.
Especially since the streak had ended, and you're not going to have that happen. I think it was just unfortunate that they matched him up with Bray. I don't think it was good timing to do that because, again, yeah, he lost to Undertaker on a return and everything like that, and it's good build up for him in a way, but I think it was, again, similar to when he had the match with Cena, that he could have used a little bit more of a push at that time than to be kind of losing the matches. And then all of a sudden, later down the road, he gets some reputation as being, well, this guy's never going to win a big match. He loses at WrestleMania a lot, and he loses it. So, yeah, I just think it was unfortunate timing for that. But I get it. I mean, it was a great matchup between two amazing characters. But I think a lot of the people that were starting to maybe buy into Bray a little bit we're kind of thinking, well, if this guy is going to be the next up, why is he losing the match? And so, yeah, I love the match, but I just think it was bad timing.
I don't know if it could be any more relevant unless it had been this year. But, AJ was the guy this year. So,
right.
Timing can be an issue.
Yep.
I was not a fan of 33. I was not a fan of the Roman feud and the ending of that match.
Yeah, well, yep.
A push is a push, but I think when you're trying to push somebody down the fans' throats, they're not going to like it. And don't get me wrong, I like Roman Reigns. I do. And I understand that Taker thought, okay, this is the end. I'm going to pass the torch to this, wonderful kid. Of course, Taker knew a lot of people from his family, just being in the business for so long. But I don't think the fans accepted it. And
no, I agree. And Vince does have a tendency to do this. He's done it before. Now, luckily for him, a lot of times it's worked. With Stone Cold, with The Rock, with people Vince has really gotten behind. It's worked a lot, but in Roman's case, it just never did. And yeah, look, I feel bad for him because I think he is a good athlete. I think he is a good person. And obviously with the leukemia and everything that he's gone through, but yeah, I just, it just doesn't seem like he's going to ever catch on. And I don't know what they're going to need to do with this character. Whether or not, to be honest, I think he should go back to being a heel. But we'll see. But yeah, no, I agree. I don't think, and obviously now fans know what had gone on in that match as well. And yeah, I just don't. Vince was just way too behind him, and you could tell.
Yeah.
I think it was the Raw after that match. Roman got booed out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, it was 20 minutes.
Yep.
That promo lasted of nothing but boos. Roman trying to talk and then just boo. I mean, it was 20 minutes or more.
Yeah, they would not. They would not let him speak. When he tried to open his mouth, they showered him with boos, and he couldn't even talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That honestly, Roman, that happened 3 years too late, in my opinion. Yeah. Roman should have been the guy at 30 that ended the streak instead of Brock. In my opinion, because I don't feel like it did anything for Brock to get that win. He was already an established guy. He was already seen as dominant. So if you were going to do that, if you had it in your mind to end the streak, why not end it with Roman at 30 instead of waiting 3 years to do it then?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Roman would have gone over as a major heel at that point too. So
or give it to Bray at 31. Give it to Bray.
That's what. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I'm one of those people that feel like the streak shouldn't have ended. I feel like the Undertaker deserves it. the blood, sweat, tears, time, you know, not coming out of kayfabe, for 30 years he's given to this company, and I think he deserved to have the streak stay intact.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's right up there with, when people talk about it, and now it's funny because wrestling now is talked about more on sports shows like ESPN and things like that, where it was never in the past. They kind of always made fun of it. But now that is talked about on things like that, that was talked about right up there with, with undefeated teams, with, teams that had won. I know the Patriots, obviously, in the last decade or more have been the team that has won all the Super Bowls. So it was being talked about right up there with things like that. So, yeah, I mean, looking back at it, I kind of agree. It's sad that it's gonna be the one on the whatever
Right.
it becomes in one spot. So yeah, I agree. It kind of stinks that is the case, but
Yeah. And 34, I feel like all we can say is there was a 3-minute squash match with John Cena, and
yeah,
Elias, showed his face. That was about it.
yeah. And again, you can see these now on the last ride, and he talks
Yes.
about these things, and I don't even think he was too thrilled with that.
No.
When he, how he talked about it and said how, yeah, okay, I was ready to go, and then I came out and it was over before I even knew it, and then I walked away, and I kind of, you could see the look on his face, kind of thinking he was just unsatisfied with that. And you kind of know why they did it, to kind of make him look like, hey, this guy's back now. And look what he can do. But yeah, I don't know, that quick squash match with Cena, I don't really think was what people wanted to see.
No, and I didn't even like the build to it.
Right. Yep.
I didn't like that. I felt like it was forced.
With you mean with Taker never showing up and how Cena kept calling him out? It's like I agree. It was kind of stupid.
When Cena seems forced on the mic,
yeah,
it's not a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, of course, there was no match at 35, and then you have 36. But I want to talk about some of the Saudi Arabia events we have, or the biggest Royal Rumble, or Australia, whatever they call it. I think they change the name every time. But I don't think he's been happy with any of those matches, even though, in one of them it's Taker and Kane versus Triple H and Shawn.
Yeah.
I don't think he wasn't happy with that match.
No.
He had a casket match with Rusev.
Yeah.
I love the bringing back of the casket match, but he wasn't happy with that. And then Goldberg, even though it seems like a dream match, it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that was a disaster. And again, he talked about that one, like Goldberg got concussed very early on. And then it just was a disaster after that. And God, I'll tell you what, now, you see when they showed the jackhammer a lot closer up during that match. And boy, oh boy, Undertaker was very lucky that he didn't get a broken neck from that jackhammer, because man, that looked awful. And his wife talks about that. Michelle McCool talks about how, my God, he could have been seriously injured. And the fact that he just sat there after that match in the ring at the end, and you could just tell he was fuming after that. So yeah, I agree. It almost makes me wonder if he's going to try to go. I mean, you have the Saudi pay-per-view that's going to come up later this year. It'll be I think it's around Halloween time. So it almost kind of makes you wonder if he's going to show up to that, just because of the fact that like you said, he's probably never really been happy with any of those matches.
I don't know. I think if Undertaker was going to go out right now, you couldn't do any better than 36.
Yeah.
But I think so many people expect him to do something around the Survivor Series time, because it's the 30-year anniversary. I'm not 100%. And look, I've never seen The Undertaker live. I want to see Taker live, trust me. And trust me, I don't want him to hang the hat and the coat up. But, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a man. And if he feels like it's time in his mind, like Shawn Michaels said on this last episode last night, he's got to feel like it's his time in his mind and say, okay, I can walk out. And, you know, if 36 was it, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. It was definitely, Jeff talked about it, and I'll let him talk about it because, you know, I know he has his theory on the way that this is going to end this Sunday, and I'm sure this is going to be a very highly watched show. And I know I can't wait for it. But I think that, yeah, look, you can't do any better than that cinematic match. I was glued to my seat, and I can remember talking to Jeff after this. It was over, and man, oh man, I was just stunned by how good this was, and from him putting his elbow through that hearse and busting up his elbow, and then going on and the rest. Oh, and that match was so good. And then obviously, like Jeff mentions, him just getting on the bike and riding off into the sunset with the Undertaker symbol burning on the building. You can't get any better. You really can't get any better. And Jeff is in agreement. If you believe that he's done and he's going to announce that on this show, that was it, I'm done. That's my last match. I'm announcing my retirement officially. And that's, I know what Jeff thinks. Yeah, listen, you can, for me, I'd love to see the match with him and Sting happen as a cinematic match. It would be amazing. I'd love to see him pass the torch to Bray as well with the Fiend. But if it doesn't and he ends on that match, listen, I'm good with it. You couldn't have done any better.
And here's the thing. If he does pass the torch to AJ and that's it, it continues a trend. Shawn Michaels, he quit with Taker. Taker's an older guy. AJ, he's not a young guy anymore. Flair, when he retired, he passed the torch to Shawn. Shawn's not the youngest guy in the world, and I don't know if anybody has really connected those dots to those trends. But I thought, that's really interesting because you're putting faith in a younger guy, you're putting faith in a younger talent, but you're also putting faith in somebody where 20 years ago they would have said, okay, you're hanging up your hat at 40 years old, and Taker's turning it over to AJ. And he's saying, hey, buddy, you still got some gas in the tank.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, the more I think about the thing with Bray, I think everybody just loves his character so much that they want to see him be given that, next face of fear thing from Undertaker. But you know what? Undertaker may look at him and think to himself, you know what? You're doing yourself a pretty good job there. You may not need me to get you over because, man, you are pretty much over as you could be right now. And he might just think to himself, you know what am I going to do for this kid that he already hasn't done for himself?
I would love to see Bray and Aleister Black as the next Taker Foley. If that wouldn't work, then bring in Bo and somehow make him into the next Taker Kane.
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Jeff, go ahead, because I know you had thoughts on this, and I know you're in agreement with Brandi. You think that this is going to be it for him?
Yeah, I do. I don't know how long ago I said this. Maybe when it first started. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But I felt like this whole series was, it just too many things have happened in the series. This is the first time we've really gotten an in-depth look at, Mark Calloway beyond the Undertaker character. And some things that he said early on about AJ, especially with making comparisons between AJ and Shawn. I just felt like, this is all like too perfect. And then for AJ to bring in Michelle McCool, obviously that had to be okayed with both Michelle and Undertaker. So I just felt like this was the time. And then you look at that match, and it was, honestly, it was the closest thing to perfect that I've seen in wrestling in quite some time. There have been some darn near perfect moments, and that was one of them. So I think this Sunday, I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to hear that. I'd love to see him against Sting or Bray, but I just feel like with all of the disappointments that he's had over the last several years, I feel like he's finally in a place where he can be comfortable with the result of what he did at this year's WrestleMania. So I feel like why not go ahead and walk out on top, because I mean that match was just fantastic.
And here's one
Absolutely.
more thing you can kind of put on top of it. I know a lot of people said, well, at Money in the Bank, why was there an Undertaker room? I think that was just kind of saying, okay, AJ's always going to be haunted by that ghost.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But listen, I talked about athletes. I talked about sports comparisons and stuff like that. And, you know, every athlete, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are fans of certain teams and athletes and whatnot. Every athlete wants to have a moment where they can go out on their own terms with their hand held high and be at the top of their game. Every athlete wants that. You know, that's why you see people retire. I mean, what comes to mind is John Elway, the famous quarterback for the Broncos, when Denver won the Super Bowl and he retired. He walked off the field as a champion with his hand held high in the air, and that is the best way you can leave something like that. And you know what? Like Jeff just said, how much better can you get than going out the way he did, riding off into the sunset after what everybody is going to talk about? That match is going to be talked about for years and years. So, like Jeff said, it makes a lot of sense. Why push it and bring yourself in to another, you know, match where something like, we've all seen his personality on this show and we know he's a perfectionist. So why bring yourself into another one when maybe something goes wrong and then it's going to just continue all over again and you're just going to have to build up to something else.
Right.
Yeah, man. I agree with you. You know, as much as I'd love to see certain matchups and stuff, and we all would, fantasy matchups and this and that, but yeah, man, you can't get any better than that Boneyard match. You just can't get any better than that.
No.
Well, there you go, guys. We took you 3 weeks into the career of The Undertaker. You asked for that way back when. It almost seems like a longer time ago. But we pulled you. You asked for that. And Brandi covered the career of who is going to go down as one of the greatest legends in the sport, without a doubt, The Undertaker. And obviously, you know, we will all be, if that does happen this coming Sunday, it's going to be huge news in wrestling. And it's probably a good thing that there are no pay-per-views and stuff that weekend, because it will be the story of the weekend that Undertaker has retired. So yeah,
and if the insiders will cover it.
We will. Yes, we will certainly talk about it.
Yep.
That is very true. We will definitely talk about it. I'm sure the folks we bring on our show, Gary Cassidy will, I'm sure, talk about it as well. But yes, absolutely, we will definitely talk about it. So, Brandi, what have you got coming up next? I know we mentioned that we want to maybe discuss a little bit of Waylon Mercy, and then let the guys know about the book of the week.
You know I'm ready to talk about Waylon Mercy. I've been talking about him from the beginning. Guys, if you want a little preview of the character, go back and watch Cape Fear. It's a very entertaining film, a wonderful psychological thriller for its time, and that's where really the character came from. And Vince let Dan Spivey run with it. So if you really want a good preview, if you want to watch a good movie, if you want a good story, go watch that. And my book this week is The Eighth Wonder of the World. It's about Andre the Giant. It's a wonderful book. If you get the audiobook, the narration is fantastic. I cannot remember the author's name right now, so just Google it. But you really see more of the man in this book and how he really became the wrestling phenomenon that he became. So you're not going to be disappointed. And invest in either the hard copy or the audiobook or the Kindle, you know, whatever you prefer. But on the audiobook, the narration is really great.
Awesome. And yeah, man, reading about Andre the Giant is always a great thing. Legend of the sport as well. So, listen, Brandi, thank you very much for joining us again this week. And I hope you guys all enjoyed this three-part segment of The Undertaker. If you did not hear parts 1 and 2, they are on our channel. Go back and listen. And next week, man, we got Waylon Mercy. You Fiend people all should be here for that one because we know that he plays such a big part. I mean, Bray has a puppet in the Funhouse named for him. So, yes, join us for that. And we will see you guys next week on the Hot Tag. Brandi, I'm going to tag you out.
Rest in peace.
Awesome, guys. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.